G'day, I'm Alan Gamble. Welcome to another weekly roundup on the Aussie Box Office. A somewhat suppressed week due to Queensland and Brisbane being out of commission. One of our capital cities over here being completely shut down due to a tropical cyclone and tropical low that swept through. So no movies if you were in Brisbane, which I was, so I didn't get to see Mikey 17 yet. But let's get into the top 10 and see where we're tracking. At number 1 is Mikey 17 with $1.6 million. The new opening movie from Jun Ho Bong, which I will be catching this week instead of next week. So I would expect a lower percentage drop-off next week for Mikey 17. But Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, is at number 2 with $986,000. After 4 weeks of release, another 45% drop for a current total of $13.6 million. Captain America Brave New World with another $746,000 after 4 weeks of release as well, with another 47% drop for a current total of $12.1 million. Ne Zha 2 at 4th position with another $275,000 after 4 weeks of release as well, with a 63% drop this week, its largest drop so far, with a current total of $6.8 million. And at number 5, reappearing in the charts, after 11 weeks of release, we have Anora with another $243,000. Obviously, thanks to its Best Picture winning Oscar Academy Award, it shot back up the charts, probably had a considerable expansion or re-expansion of screens picking it up, with a 1,059% increase week on week. It brought in around $20,000 last week to expand it up to $243,000 this week for a current total of $2.4 million. And why don't we take a quick look at Jun Ho Bong opening weekends? Now this one was a bit of an interesting one, as you can clearly see here, Mikey 17 is actually his only wide release in the Australian market. Parasite in 2019, that opened to $59,000, only opened in 35 screens. It expanded to over 100 screens only when it was nominated for that year's Oscars 9 months later. So in February the following year, it expanded to 100 plus screens. But when it actually released, it opened in 35. Okja in 2017 didn't release anywhere outside of South Korea, as far as I can tell, theatrically. Snowpiercer in 2014 opened to $52,000 in 2 screens in Australia. Mother from 2010 opened to just over a few $1,000s in 1 screen back in 2010. And The Host from 2007 opened to $51,000 in around 10 screens. So this is his first actual big wide release in Australia. So there's no clear indication of, is it good, is it bad, is it a good opening for this director, is it a bad opening? That said, it's his largest Australian opening by far, but it is also his most expensive movie to date. So let's see how this one continues, as I'll be catching it this weekend. And moving on to 6 through 10. At number 6, we have A Complete Unknown, after 7 weeks of release, with another $216,000, a 28% drop for a current total of $7.9 million. At number 7, Conclave sticks around after 9 weeks of release with another 13% drop, with another $209,000 for a current total of just over $7.9 million. At number 8, One of Them Days, at $208,000 for a current total of $218,000. That is the other title that I was going to try and catch last weekend, but couldn't. At number 9, The Monkey at $208,000 after 3 weeks of release, with another 48% drop for a current total of $1.4 million. If you can see, 7, 8, and 9 are within hundreds of dollars of each other. It's pretty crazy how close they are. But when you take out a variable of an entire capital city, stuff like this can happen. At number 10, we have Spit with David Wenham, the new release, the Aussie movie, with $196,000 for a current total of $393,000, as I think that must have been floating around in limited releases and film festivals. So that's how much it's made up until that point, and then it all gets lumped in once it goes live. Now, there is some interesting things with different numbers and different sources. So I have seen in different reporting that one of them days and the monkey have been swapped around. But as you can see, one reports at $208,209, the other at $208,215, and the source that has them switched for the monkey at 8 and one of them days at 9 relies on an Australian dollars to US dollars conversion. But the source that has them at 8 and 9 respectively, that source uses and reports with Australian dollars. So that's what I'm using there. The reason I don't use that source for everything is because you only get a limited amount of data. And for what I need all of the data. So I typically rely on the other source, but in this case, I'm relying on the true source that I only have limited data from. So I can't extrapolate full box office numbers. But there we go. That's our top 10 for this week. Checking in on what's dropped out of the top 10 this week. We had Mufasa the Lion King finally dropping out of the top 10 after 12 weeks of releasing just before Boxing Day. We have I'm Still Here out after 5 weeks. So it was in limited release, went wide a couple of weeks ago, and then has dropped back out. And In the Lost Lands, the latest Paul W.S. Anderson movie, is out of the top 10 after just 1 week of release, dropping 77% in its week 2 to bring in just over $35,000, which is, well, that's not good, that's for sure. I don't think there's any universe that can't be considered an absolute bomb. Moving right along to the 2025 top 10 of the Australian box office. Not too many changes this week, with Paddington in Peru still at number 1 with $17.5 million. Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy still in second at $13.6 million. And Captain America Brave New World still in third position with $12.1 million. Then there's a little bit of a drop where we have 3 movies following that are all at $7.9 million and some change, with Nosferatu at number 4 with $7.996 million, Conclave at $7.959 million, and A Complete Unknown at number 6 with $7.927 million. Ne Zha 2 moves up a spot, jumping over We Live in Time with $6.8 million, and We Live in Time drops down to number 8 with $6.7 million. Then there's a little bit of a drop again with Baby Girl at $3.4 million. And at number 10, with its gross frozen, is Den of Thieves 2 Pantera at $2.6 million. So basically, Den of Thieves 2 Pantera has stopped reporting its gross, so it is no longer in release. So anything that is frozen is going to be highlighted as green moving forward. So we can tell which ones are still going to move up and down. Well, they can still move down even if their position is frozen, but that's how we're looking for 2025 so far. And upcoming theatrical releases for this week. Really not too much releasing theatrically, but we'll look at what we do have coming up. First up, on March 14th, we have Black Bag, the latest from director Steven Soderbergh, starring Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender, about a spy's wife accused of betraying the nation, and he faces the ultimate test of loyalty to his wife or his country. It's Steven Soderbergh. I'm sure it'll be fun, at least to some degree. In limited release, so catch these if you can at normally smaller chains, we have Bornhofer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin, a World War II historical drama about Dietrich Bonhoeffer joining a plot to assassinate Hitler, and directed by Todd Kominsky. We also have The Diplomat, a Hindi-language thriller from Shivam Nair about a woman who rushes into the Indian High Commission, otherwise known as an embassy, in Islamabad, claiming to be an Indian citizen and requesting refuge. and it's deemed as a thriller where the hero doesn't need weapons to fight his battles. Jumping over to streaming, March 13th gives us Adolescence over on Netflix, a new miniseries from the creators of Stephen Graham and Jack Thorne about a 13-year-old child who is accused of murdering his classmate, and his family, therapists, and detectives must find out the truth of what happened. On March 14th, also on Netflix, we have The Electric State, another Netflix movie from Anthony and Joe Russo. Will it be any better than their last attempt? I hope so. But this one is starring Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Woody Harrelson, Ke Huy Quan, and Giancarlo Esposito, and many, many others. The cast is absolutely stacked as per usual with these guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean a good movie. But this movie, The Electric State, is about a orphan teen hitting the road with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother. Over on Amazon, on March 14th, we have Fuck, Marry, Kill, or F, Marry, Kill, depending on where you see it written. An Amazon movie from director Laura Murphy, starring Lucy Hale, about a true crime junkie who gets caught in the middle of her own murder mystery when one of the men she's dating could be the swipe right killer. So that should be interesting or terrible. Over on Apple TV Plus on March 14th, we have the start of Dope Thief, a new series from creators Peter Craig and starring Brian Tyree Henry and Wagner Moura. It's about two friends posing as DEA agents to rob a country house, but the grift goes wrong, a little bit pear-shaped, when they discover one of the biggest narcotic corridors in the East Coast. This one looks quite interesting. And in relation to returning series, on March 13th, Wheel of Time on Amazon returns with Season 3, its third season as the party ventures into the Ale Waste. Will it be as big an improvement as Season 2 was compared to Season 1? I hope so. But I'll be watching regardless because it's one of my favourite book series of all time. And while Season 1 was not very good, Season 2 was a marked improvement. And I hope Season 3 will continue to do the same. Alright, and to recap what I ended up watching for last week's Cinema Chums Movie Challenge, that was Oscar in Memoria as the theme, I ended up with 3 titles due to the distractions that we had going in Queensland of tropical cyclone / tropical low coming through and causing some havoc, but I still ended up with 3. Starting with Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb from 1964 from director Stanley Kubrick, written by Terry Southern, Stanley Kubrick and Peter George. For challenge eligibility, it starred Earl James Jones, and generally considered a film classic, and I get why, with its Cold War paranoia taken to 11 to the point of absolute parody. Although I think I do prefer Failsafe, also from 1964, which is almost identical as a movie, but played far more straight, from director Sidney Lumet, who gave us all-time classics like Network, Dog Day Afternoon, and Serpico. But either way, both great movies. Next up was The Conversation from 1974, from director Francis Ford Coppola and written by the same. And as for challenge eligibility, it was starring Gene Hackman. Another movie that I'd recently seen a similar version of, albeit far more recently, in The Lives of Others from 2006. But The Conversation is about a paranoid surveillance expert who is struggling with the questionable ethical limits of what if surveillance results in the deaths of others as a direct result. Another classic that, while I did prefer the slightly more overlapping thematic movie of The Lives of Others, The Conversation still holds a solid watch. Lastly, from 1969 was John Slaginger's Midnight Cowboy. And for challenge eligibility, it starred M. Emmett Walsh. Written by Waldo Salt and based on the book by James Leo Hillary, Midnight Cowboy is a pretty well-regarded classic, with the famous line of "Hey, I'm walking here," delivered by Dustin Hoffman, about a pretty dumb country guy escaping his small world and moving to New York City to become a gigolo. That was probably prompted by a pretty messed up upbringing that we're exposed to through flashbacks and some pretty interesting camera work showing fantasy versus reality versus memory. It was done pretty well, but it's about the lead character off to New York City where he crosses paths with another swindler of Rizzo who initially scams him, but ultimately they become friends on their journey to escape to Florida. Well-regarded classic, and I get why all the movies I watched this week were actually fairly well-regarded classics that I'd never actually watched. So that's why I love doing this challenge. Looking at this week's Cinechums Movie Challenge for International Women's Day. So anything directed by a woman or written by a woman. So we have quite a few options. Female leads, no co-male leads. Female award winners. And starring a woman you're trying to 100% complete for those people that are trying to complete an actor's or actress's full filmography. There's a lot of good examples. American Psycho was directed by a woman. Cleo from 5 to 7. We have things like Hidden Figures or Lady Bird. Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. There's a lot of good options. Let's take a look at my very long shortlist for this week. We have things like Embers or Fast Colors and Jewel, Worst Person in the World, Bound by the Wachowski siblings, Disobedience and Anna, Edge of 17, Sucker Punch, The Shadow Strays. Cleo from 5 to 7 is very high on my radar, as is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, as well as things like Aline and Kimmy. And that is it for me this week. Nice and short one. I do plan on catching Mikey 17 maybe on Thursday, maybe on the weekend, as well as I think I want to get through a lot of challenge movies this weekend as well. But we should have a much more calm, relaxed weekend up here in Brisbane this weekend with no tropical cyclones. That would be lovely. So I think a lot of people are just going to be catching up on everything they missed. So I would like to see a lot of higher holds for Mikey 17 and stuff in next week's theatrical release. But when that happens, we will be there and I will see you then. Bye.